Welcome to this video where I'll be talking about the analysis portfolio and the first part of the analysis portfolio, which is the portfolio you're going to be working with during the course. As you can see, I have Yamovi with the youth data 2014-2016 ready to go. This is the dataset I'm going to be working with in this example. And in this video, or these videos, it will be 3 videos. This is the first one, working with part 1 of the analysis portfolio. I'm only going to show you the technicalities and how you do it in Yamovi, working with the data. I will not be discussing or going into the different analysis or interpreting the results that much, because that's what we're going to be working with in class and discuss in class. So this is strictly for showing you how to do it in Yamovi. So okay, we have this analysis portfolio that you'll be working with, which consists of 3 parts, as I said, and we'll be working with, I'll be showing you how to do this first part in Yamovi in this video. So if we just go for the preparation, or just go fast through the preparations, first you need to choose a dataset, youth data or NOLAG. You will find the questionnaire, only youth data, and overviews of the variables and the datasets in Canvas. And let me this questionnaire is in Norwegian though, so it's yeah, I'm sorry for that, but I have an overview of the variables that are in English. And choose the dataset that involve themes and questions that you are interested in and would like to study in more detail. Secondly, select for your study 6 question variables in youth data or NOLAG. At least 3 of these questions should be scaled. A scale question involves at least 4 possible answers. That is from more to less, or less to more, like 4 different possible answers. I'll show you how a scaled variable, what a scaled variable looks like when in my example. So the first assignment is a title, a research question, and introduction. And I always give you this why. Why is this important? Well, a good title is important both to arouse the reader's interest and inform the reader of the content. Short and precise titles are preferred over titles that are with a lot of information and long words. Good title is always important. A good research question, again, is focused, limited, and researchable. A research question must outline who is included in the study and which characteristics. In other words, the research question must clearly state who the units of study are and what variables are included, as well as the relationship between the different variables that are to be examined. The introduction gives the reader first impression of the text, and a good introduction should have a general start which places the topic being studied in a larger context and show why it's important to examine exactly this topic. Furthermore, a good introduction should give the reader a brief introduction to the different parts of the project's report. In this project report, I shall first, and then I shall, and finally I have. You can call it a project, an article, paper, whatever you like, but that is generally what you should include in the introduction. So what to do? Find a title for your report or your paper, and remember to write your own name on the front page. That's important if you're going to be looking at others, or if you're going to read others. Always put your name on something, because it's if you're going to get comments by someone, or you're going to several of you are going to read one another, it's nice to know which one you are reading. Formulate a research question for your study. Note that the depend variable in your study must be the one of the scale variables in youth data or NOLAG. So it has to be a scaled one, the depend variable. Write a short introduction where you introduce the subject you want to study. Use previous research and or experiences as inspiration. So I've just really, I have, based on use data, I made an example, and the title of my example is Hard Work and High Expectations: What Influences Norwegian Young People's Perceptions of the Status It Gives to Be Good at School. It might not be the best title, it's a working title, and I will probably, if I was going to do a study on this, I would probably be working on the title as I went on. But anyway, it's a nice title, or a totally acceptable title for this type of work. And the research question, the research question is: do young people who work a lot with the school, who work a lot with schoolwork on the weekends and experience high expectations, perceive that it gives higher status to be good at school? And I also have some input into the intro, because I always you might not be able to put all your independent variables into the, or all the factors you want to study into your research question or research questions, but you can also address them in the text that just follows the research question, saying that I also want to investigate whether the perception, what status it gives to be good at school, varies with gender, age, measured as grade level, grade level, and the status it gives to get drunk. So, and this is based on previous research that shows that especially girls in upper secondary school experience high pressure compared to boys. This pressure is particularly significant amongst those who believe it gives low status to participate in party culture and getting drunk. Which is measured by the status one gets by getting drunk. That's how I'm measuring participation in party culture and getting drunk. So this is my title and my research question. It's very it's something that can be worked upon during the whole, and I mean, in all types of analysis and all types of research work or creating work that involves creating new knowledge, you will always be going back and forth with working on the title, the research question or questions, and the analysis you do. So it's not put in stone. Okay. So that's 1.1. Let's move on to 1.2. And 1.2 is interpretation of different measures of central tendency. Again, the purpose of this task is to both practice the interpretation of different measures of central tendency and to make assessments of the level of measurement for different variables. One rule of thumb is to choose the measure of central tendency that provides the most information, but the choice depends on the variable's level of measurement. So again, you want to choose that measure of central tendency that provides the most information, but you cannot. You have to be conscious of the variable's level of measurement, because you cannot. Certain these measures of central tendency, some demands a higher level of measurement. So what to do? Report the average, the median, and the mode for the 6 variables you have selected, and interpret the most relevant measure for central tendency for each of the 6 variables. When making the argument for which of the measures for central tendency that is the most relevant, you should refer to the level of measurement for each variable. The goal is to use as much as possible of the information each variable has to offer. In Yamovi, you choose analysis, exploration, descriptives. You put your dependent and independent variables over in variables, and you tick off statistics, and there you choose central tendency, mean, median, mode. So let's do that. I can also say that I have made this analysis model, so to speak. You don't have to make this kind of model, but it's really it makes it a lot easier for me you should make at least have a note where you put the short names. I have the short names for gender and age here, which is kjønn and klasse, and then I have the short names skole 5, skole 7, which is high expectations from others to do well in schoolwork on the weekends is skole 7, and status, getting drunk, is status 3, and my dependent variable is status 1, with this status being good at school. So from having this overview, you don't have to make it like this, but to help you just to keep track on the short names, because these short names are the one you have to look up when you're working with your movie, and how they are measured, for example. It's really much easier to just have this kind of have some type of overview at least. So okay, so I have to find the different measures of central tendency for these 5 and 6 variables. So I have 6 variables, 5 independent and 5 dependent. So I go for exploration, I go for descriptives, and then you can choose to have it like this, or you can see the data like this. Whatever you like to do. I often like to just have the data there so I can see that my data set is okay, maybe, I don't know. But anyway, that's not the real issue here. The issue is to find the different variables you are going to be working with. And so we have to find gender, which is kjønn. I use this function to find it, and then I put over gender, and I'm looking up age. Oh, sorry, that's not age, it's called klasse. That's age, because that's a different so that's a measure of age. And then I have skole 5, and I have skole 7, which is one of my variables, and I have status 3, and I have status 1, which is my dependent variable. And as I said, you have to go for statistics, and because as you see, central tendency, you already have mean and the median, but we have to tick off for mode, and then you get this table here with so you know, gender, age, which is measured with klasse, skole 5, skole 7, status 3 and status 1, and as I said, these short names might not say anything to you, so it's really nice to have this kind of overview where you kind of put in whatever form you would like it to be, but so you know how that for gender, for example, which is kjønn, that boys are 1 and girls are 2, for example, and for skole 5, that's high expectations, okay, and that runs from many people, or that the question is, many people expect me to do well at school. Totally agree is like 1, is it measured 1, and totally disagree is measured 4. So and I mean that's a scaled question, so I would go for using the mean, and the mean is 1.62, which means that on average Norwegian youth, they say that they somewhat agree, so it's more towards 2 than 1. So on average they say that they somewhat agree to the question, many people expect me to do well at school. If it was 1.5, it would be like between totally agree and somewhat agree. So it's somewhere between totally agree and somewhat agree, but more towards somewhat agree, because it's 1.62. So when interpreting these my point being, when interpreting these measures, you have to look at the level of measurement for the different variables. Are they scaled, or are they at the nominal level? And you also have to know how the questions have been asked to make any a reasonable interpretation of these numbers. As you can see from kjønn, which is gender, in this data set, the mode is the most, which is the most frequent value, is that's boys, because boy is equal to 1, so there are more boys than girls in this data set. Okay, so then from knowing that 1 is equal to boy, then we know that with the mode equal to 1, then we know that there are more boys than girls who have in our data set. Okay, so yes. Now we have I've shown you how to find different measures of central tendency. 1.3 is the distribution on the depend variable. The purpose of this task is to practice the interpretation of a distribution. That is to provide a meaning to the distribution that emerge. In order to give a meaning to the distribution, the interpretation must be based on the question or questions that form the basis of the depend variable. In the commentary of the distribution, it should be emphasized what is the central value and what values really occur. So what to do? Run the frequency distribution for the depend variable in your study and report the relative distribution as well as the n, that's the total, comment on the distribution. And in your movie you do analysis, expression, descriptives, depend variable over in variables, and then the frequency table. And you can right click on the table to save or copy. Okay, so then we choose exploration and we choose descriptives. And I already have state here, so STA. So then I know that status 1 is my depend variable, so I can just take over that, and you have to tick off for frequency tables. And yeah, then you get this table with the relative distribution. This is the relative distribution, and this is the n distribution. That is the total sum of people who have answered increase your status a lot to be good at school, increases your status a bit to be good at school. Doesn't make a difference. As you see, most, like over 50% says that it doesn't make a difference. Just 1.4% says that it reduces your social status a bit, and 1.3 says that it reduces your social status a lot. So this is the relative distribution, and you have something called the cumulative, and that's the percentage that have answered increase your social status a bit, or a higher value, which is increase your social status a lot. So that is 33 plus 13.8, which is 46.8. And 97.3 have answered doesn't make a difference, or increase your social status a bit, or increase your social status a lot. So the cumulative is really those who have answered this option and the options above. So you can see that from the cumulative. You can also have something called the reverse cumulative, which is the other way around. But in this assignment, you are going to be commenting on the distribution. Yes, what you get from these numbers, and yeah. From these numbers, I would say that quite a lot of Norwegian youth say that it does increase your social status, but quite a lot says that it doesn't make a difference at all. Okay, so then we go for assignment 1.4, interpretation of the distribution conditional of the value of one. On the value of an independent variable, and the purpose of this task is to practice the interpretation of a distribution conditional of the value of an independent variable. That is to give me a meaningful content to the distribution that appears given the values of the independent variable. The task is to see if there are any interesting differences that appear on the dependent variable for units with different values on an independent variable. The task consists of interpreting two conditional distributions. In order to give meaning to the distribution, the interpretation must be based on the question or questions that form the basis of the dependent variable. In the commentary of the distribution, it should be emphasized whether interesting differences appear or whether the distribution is relatively similar. So what to do? In the same table where you reported the relative distribution for the dependent variable in your study, report the relative distribution and n for one of the independent variables on the dependent variable. In your movie, you choose analysis, frequency, contingency table, independent sample. You put over the dependent variable in columns and the independent variables in rows, and you go to cells and you tick off percentage and row. So let's do that. We go to frequency, we go to independent samples, and then, as I said, I have status 1 as my independent variable, and I just say I can just take this over there, and I put that over in columns, this over in columns, and then I put my independent variable, and I'm going to be looking at whether there's a difference between boys and girls as to the status being at school. Do we find a interesting difference between boys and girls as to whether they think their status is affected by being good at school? So I find kön, which is gender, and I put that over in rows. And I have to also go for cells, and I have to tick off row to get the get the percentages. And this is a quite long table, so I will just look at it a bit, and then you see that boys are in the top and girls are in the below. So let's look at reduce your. There's somewhat more boys that say that being good at school reduce your social status a lot, and there's somewhat less girls. Looking at those who say that it increase your social status a lot, there are also more boys that says that it increases your status a lot, and a little less girls who say that 14.2 versus 13.2. So it's boys seem to be in both ends, so to speak. But if you look at those who said that doesn't make any difference, it's quite equal. It's more girls that say that it doesn't make any difference, somewhat less boys. 49.1% of the boys say that it doesn't make a difference, whereas 51.9% of the girls say that it doesn't make a difference. About 1/3 says that of both boys and girls say that it increases your social status a lot. So from looking at this, it does look like the main difference between boys and girls is that girls actually think that it doesn't make such a great difference, whereas boys are more in both ends of the scale, in the sense that they say that it increases your status a lot, or they say that it reduces your social status a lot compared to girls. They're more inclined to say that it either reduces your social status a lot or reduce your social status a lot compared to girls, but the difference isn't huge, so to say, but there's a difference. Okay, so then we have then we have looked at the relative distribution for the dependent variable. Yes, on the basis of only independent variables. And then task 1.5 is the assessment of the conceptual validity of the dependent variable. The purpose of this task is to discuss the conceptual validity of the dependent variable. Given that there are no right or wrong answer to this question, the author must present compelling arguments that the question or questions used in fact measure the social phenomenon one is seeking to measure. The assessment of the conceptual validity should include account of both strengths and weaknesses of the question or questions used. In other words, a discussion. Give an assessment of the concept validity of your dependent variable. What to do? Is the question a good operationalization of the theoretical phenomenon you want to measure? There is no right or wrong answer to this question, but you have to present arguments for your point of view. So in my example, I would be discussing, is this a good way of measuring the status of being good at school, or should I use other questions, include more questions? Are there other ways of measuring this social phenomenon, or maybe I would say that, and what are the qualities with this question? I mean, there are no right, as I write in the portfolio, there is no right or wrong question. There's really just a critical reflection on the question you have chosen to use, and some thoughts on how it could have been been asked in a different way to make it even better, or maybe it's perfect. Then make arguments for it being perfect. So that's what you're going to do in 1.5. And 1.6, assessment of the form of distribution. Of a distribution. The purpose of this task is to practice assessing the shape of a distribution, and in this task the focus is on the normal distribution. The normal distributed variable must have values that are close to the average and with a falling number of observations that deviates in a positive or negative direction. With most values around the mean and falling numbers of observations in a positive or negative direction. The normal distribution will look like a clock, and that is therefore internationally referred to as a bell curve, as an old type of clock. What to do? Examine the distribution of the dependent variable in terms of normal distribution, and give an assessment of the form of the distribution. In your movie, you choose analysis, exploration, descriptives, and you put your dependent variable over in variables, and then you go for plots, and then you choose the histogram. So what do we do? Well, I can just take this over here. You go to explorations, you go to descriptives. Mine again is status 1, that's my dependent variable. And you go to statistics and you choose, no, sorry, you don't go there. You go to plots and you choose the histogram. And, from having this this overview, I know that three doesn't make any difference. So most people have answered that it doesn't make a difference, which is close to the mean. The mean was 1 point. What was the mean again? I can go up and see. The mean was 2.43. So the mean is somewhere around, like, almost in the middle somewhere here. So it's close to the mean, so you can see that it's kind of shaped like a bell. However, I would say that it's a bit right skewed, in the sense that we are missing some values here on the right side. There are very few who have said that it reduces your social status a bit or it reduces your social status a lot. So there are quite few on this end, whereas there are more people on this end. So it's I would say that it looks pretty normal distributed, but with a bit right skewed though. Okay. So that's the formal distribution, and then assignment 1.7 is the interpretation of different measures of dispersion. The purpose of this task is to first extract the values for the different measures of dispersion in a depend variable, report them, and provide an interpretation. The standard deviation expresses variation from the mean. A range expresses the difference between the highest maximum and the lowest value minimum. What to do? Examine the different measures for dispersion in the depend variable and provide an interpretation of them. Remember that it's easier to interpret the standard deviation if you relate the value of the standard deviation to the mean. So how do you do this? In your movie, you choose analysis, exploration, descriptives, depend variable. You put that over in variables, statistics, and you go for dispersion, standard deviation, range, mean, and maximum. Okay, so let's do that. We go for exploration and descriptives. And again, I have status 1 here, so I just put over that. And I go for statistics. And as you see, I have standard deviation, minimum and maximum, but I also want to include the standard deviation. Yeah, I have the standard deviation, but I want to include. Do I want to include something? Yeah, I want to include the or I can include the range in range. Yeah, that's the one I need to include. So then, what you have to do is provide the interpretation of these measures. So this is the dispersion for my depend variable. From this, I know that it has 5 values, so I can see from the minimum and the maximum that some have at least answered 1 and some have at least answered 5. And the range is the difference between the highest and lowest value, which is 4, and the standard deviation I use as a rule of thumb that if the standard deviation is half the mean, then the dispersion is quite large. If it's less than half the mean, the dispersion is lower. And as you can see from the e-lectures, there are no intuitive ways of interpreting the standard deviation. So that's my rule of thumb, really. I would say that the dispersion in this for this depend variable is quite low, given the fact that the standard deviation is quite low, and it's not half the mean. It's very much less than that. So that would be my interpretation. I use the standard deviation to look at outliers, that are values that are very much deviating from the mean, and for example, a billionaire in an income distribution would be a clear outlier, or would be and would inflate the standard deviation, create a huge standard deviation. Okay, so that was 1.7, and 1.8 is the interpretation of confidence intervals around the mean. The purpose of this task is first to extract a 95% confidence interval around the depend variable, report this, and provide an interpretation of the confidence interval. Secondly, extract a 99% confidence interval around the mean of the depend variable, report this, and provide an interpretation of the confidence interval. Lastly, provide an assessment of why the 99% interval is greater than the previous 95% confidence interval. And here you have to do a bit of calculation. You have to to calculate the 95% confidence interval around the mean and the 99. You have to take the mean and subtract or or multiply with 1.96, or add subtract or add 1.96 and multiply with a standard deviation or error of the mean. So what do? Well, you go for exploration, descriptives, and you have to in statistics you have to go for dispersion, and then you have to tick off the standard error of the mean. And I have to also put over my depend variable, and what you then do is you take the mean, and to make a 95% confidence interval you have to take this and subtract or add 1.96, which you have also multiply with the standard error on the mean. So it's really just first you take 1.96 and multiply it with this number, and then you subtract or add to the mean, and then you will get a confidence interval around the mean, which is a 95% confidence interval. And it's the same with a 99, but then you have to use 2.58, which is, so you have to multiply this with 2.58 and then add or subtract it from the mean. So then you get the confidence interval around the mean, which is the task or assignment 1.8, which is the last assignment in the first part of the analysis portfolio. So now I've shown you how you do this in Jamovi. It's pretty straightforward. The work is to interpret this and give and provide meaning to what you find, and that is what we'll be working with in class and discussing class. So yes.